Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This harbor, deadly fleet inferior, luxury, luxury. The ocean watercrafts are in the lap of luxury, where sailors are every nook and corner. On the beach, broken wine bottles are free for all. Ah, life, now in the jaw of death befall. Hello everyone, this is MD Jahin Khandokar from Octophin, welcoming you all to today's open discussion session with climate experts organized by Octophin Foundation. Today's canvas, Global Climate Change in Blue Impression. Before starting the session, we want to introduce you Dr. Wahidul Alam sir, one of our advisory board member. We are very much thankful to him that he is here with us. He is the mentor and instructor of Octophin, and we want him to say hello for our guest and audience. Please, sir. Please unmute yourself. Dr. Muhammad Wahidul Alam, sir, please unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry. Now it's okay.
Well, thank you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to everybody who are participated in the open discussion from different parts of the world. And thanks to our Octopin team to arrange us title like Global Climate Changes in a Blue Expression. As you know, climate change is a changes in some types of extreme weather events over the last several decades, which is one of the most important agenda to tackle the generation and possibly any generation in history. Recently, Bangladesh has become the most vulnerable state in terms of climate change impacts, according to the international agencies, research outcomes and reports in 2019 to 2020, like United Nations report. The threatening impacts are many and all are destructive for the future consequences of Bangladesh as well as global. So nice to meet everybody in this virtual discussion session. I am really happy to see my Professor Dr. Harun Rashid sir, and I saw lots of known faces here. So I think this discussion will be very favorable, will be very important for us for how to we can move to overcome the climate change and scenario. So I just introducing myself. I am Wahidul Alam, and associate professor of Department of Oceanography at University of Chittagong. Thank you. I just wait. I'm also waiting to see the discussion session to know something about the climate change, their impacts, and their importance in blue economy or blue expression. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now we are going to start our open discussion session. And I am saying that if you have any question, if you have any queries, if you have something to uh, express with us, feel free to ask us in the chat box, or you can raise your hand. Well, to start off, I want to send you warm wishes of the World Maritime Day. Warm indeed. Do you know what is today's temperature in Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh? 31 degrees Celsius. The average temperature of September so far is 34 degrees Celsius, which was 2.5 degrees lesser only 20 years ago. But why are we talking about air temperature instead of explaining the ocean's impression on climate? Well, because our oceans play the key role to in controlling air temperature as well as other determinants of climate staying behind the scene. Today, we have our chief guest, Dr. Harunur Rashid, professor at Bangladesh Agriculture University and associate director at Interdisciplinary Institute for Food Security, Bangladesh Agriculture University. He is a professor of aquatic ecology and climate research employed as permanent faculty member at BAU, Faculty of Fisheries since 2000. Dr. Rashid's research and work experience are quite interdisciplinary, such as aquatic stress ecology studies with fish and invertebrates, coastal marine pollution, environmental toxicology, climate change impacts, and food security. We also have Samantha Sophia, a sustainability strategist and chartered engineer in the field of urban design, architecture, and engineering. Her life's work is in becoming an effective force in holistic urban sustainability in Southeast Asia through systemic thinking, empathetic leadership, and regenerative human-centric design. Well, we will start with Sophia. Sophia, how are you?
Hi, my name is Sam. I am, as you said, a sustainability strategist, and I'm focusing very much right now on urban issues in the global south, especially with regards to climate resilience. Bangladesh is one of the countries that are most heavily looking at a very catastrophic future with regards to climate change and sea level rise, particularly. And I'm so very happy that I can be here today to be part of this discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sophia. We are eager to hear your views on global climate change. How do you want to explain these global climate change?
Uh-huh. Well, explaining global climate change takes us back to a very, very long time ago. Perhaps even before anything such as the steam engine was first imagined. And the reason why I say this is because climate change is very much linked to the ways of leadership that we have had in our current civilization model. In one way, what I'm arguing is very much that climate change is a direct outcome of the ways that we organize ourselves as human societies. So if you look back in history, the ways that we have managed ourselves, our governments, our ways of democracy, for example, that has led to this way of being in our current state has really centered upon a very masculine, strong, loud, form of leadership that has been on the basis of competition and aggression. So when we come to this age of invention, when we come to this age of technology, we start to find that we consume more and more energy. So when we start talking about climate change, we actually have to begin from our cultural evolution as human beings on this planet. So this actually starts with when we come together and decide we want to farm together because it makes more sense than perhaps going out foraging and hunting. Farming in itself was a huge, obviously, revolution, and it set the tone for starting to build excess with the surplus that we had. So this excess really turned into what cities are today. It turned into this, power struggle, really, for, people who essentially want to have some level of authority over others. And that's where this masculine leadership comes into play, because there's a form of masculine leadership that is incredibly hostile, incredibly aggressive, incredibly dominating. And that was really the form of leadership that helped us overtake with the cities being growing for thousands of years, of course. And if you look at the way that civilization has progressed in our human model, you'll find that very often, or in fact, there is no model of civilization that has not led to collapse. And what do all of these patterns tell us? So on the grand scheme of things, we can use this argument to say that we don't really know why these civilizations collapsed. But on the other hand, we kind of know, it's not one thing, it's always hundreds of things. And these hundreds of things point to one thing. We are undermining the environment upon which we have built these civilizations.
Well, actually,
So what, yes?
continue, please.
And so what we are seeing now today is the first time in human history, in at least, the history that we know about, that we are seeing this global civilizational model starting to threaten the entire global ecological system. And it's been threatening the system for a very long time now. As far as lifetimes are concerned, it's 2 lifetimes that we can see these effects. So climate change, how I explain it, is a very, very small part of this really massive way that humanity is affecting its entire ecosystem. That is kind of how I would explain climate change.
Well, thank you. There is a very good explanation from you. And now what we want to know is what kinds of things exactly you are anxious about in this topic, climate change. What kinds of things you are exactly anxious about?
The biggest thing I'm anxious about is how people will behave when we start to get into apocalyptic scenarios. You're already seeing it today, of course, in different countries. Migration patterns are changing because of climate change. Economic patterns are changing because of climate change. And there are businesses that are intent, so corporations, especially global corporations, intent on maximizing profits still in this system that extracts value, and instead of actually regenerating land, regenerating communities, regenerating bioregions. So what we are seeing is a sense of behavior that is actually completely immoral. We don't seem to be exhibiting any ethical or moral responsibility when we decide with business decisions that have massive impact on people's lives, real people's lives. And we're seeing migration patterns, especially mapped out over the next 100, 200 years, that look like, we can forget about the movies. This is real life. So this is really what makes me worried, not about the sea level changing, not about temperatures increasing, but more about what humans are going to do to other humans.
Um, well, these things are making us worried too. Climate change is creating obstacle, barrier, and hindrance to our blue planet actually. And how do you want to explain this situation? The obstacle and the hindrance of climate change in blue planet. How do you want to explain this situation?
There's a lot that we don't understand about how our planet works. We think we do. We think that we have the science, we think we've done all this research. We don't actually understand how life had evolved in the oceans, for example. And because of that, we don't understand the life-giving properties of the ocean itself. This is something that we're starting to map out with deep ocean exploration, for example. And again, this had to be led by a really famous director who decided this is my dream, to build a deep sea rover to go and explore the depths of the ocean. So our understanding of the planet, what I'm saying, is very, very minute with relation to all of the things that the planet actually is and does, all of the different things that interplay. And the oceans is a massive, massive part of that. One of the biggest impacts that we talk about often is temperature. So the ocean is a sink. It absorbs all of the carbon, it absorbs the temperature increase. And we have no idea what happens when the oceans increase even very slightly on those levels. We're starting to learn and see the effects of this. For example, coral bleaching, which is a very visual kind of clue to what's going on. Some of the most diverse oceanscapes are being directly impacted very, very quickly, year upon year upon year. And these very biodiverse places cannot recover within even like 8 or 10 years. It takes lifetimes to come back to this point, similar to rainforests on land. And we don't understand the actual repercussions of this yet because we simply don't know how ocean systems work. So my fear is that we lose something that we don't even know about or that we don't even understand. And we have no idea how those systems interact with our daily life on land. For example, I give one very small example, which is that 10% of our oxygen is produced by a certain type of bacteria that lives in the ocean. This 10% of oxygen is directly produced by one particular type of bacteria. Studies have shown, earlier this year was released, that microplastics in our seas, in our oceans, in our water, threaten the life cycle of this particular type of bacteria. And we know that in 30 years' time, there will be more plastics in the ocean than fish. So what happens when we then consider that our microplastics are directly actually through this loop, suffocating ourselves? I'm not ready to lose 10% of our oxygen just because we want to use more plastics. So that's one example that we don't even understand and we're starting to realize.
Well, actually, actually, Samantha, you have said these things, explained these things with a very good expression and with very good and effective examples. Finally, we want to know from you that please share some takeaways on what we should do to slow down the global climate change, as you are an expert.
My opinion is that the UN hasn't done its job. Our leaders haven't done their job in terms of really rising to this challenge. So I think what we can see and what we can tell from looking at the ways that our governments are responding to this crisis is that we really should not put our hopes on them. We should not give them the power, the authority, or the responsibility, in fact, to fix or help us survive these issues that we will face. As we know, the governments are part of the elites, and what the elites are doing are buying, homes in mountains so that they protect themselves from the effects of climate change and the effects of migrants coming in because there's nowhere else to go. So I think one of the most important things that we need to be doing right now, and we have the time to do, is to self-organize, to have conversations like these, to be aware, very aware of what is going to happen, to educate ourselves, to educate our communities, and to have a plan in place. What are we going to do? How can we survive if we're not able to build community in our place in the next 100 years? How can we do that in another place in that next 100 years? How can we plan ahead effectively to ensure the thrivability of the people that we care about the most, our families, our communities?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Samantha Sophia. Next, we are going to our chief guest, Dr. Harunur Rashid sir. Dr. Harunur Rashid sir, please unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello, sir. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Jahin. How are you?
Well, I'm good too. Again, we are asking the same question we have asked to Sophia. As a biologist and climate expert, how do you want to explain climate change, the global climate change actually?
Thank you, Jahin. First, greetings to the speaker, Sophia, and I see a number of my colleagues and my students and participants from different parts of the world. Well, what climate change is, we already know. The greenhouse gas emissions, mostly because of the fossil fuel burn and land use changes in this planet done by human. And as a result, we call that climate change is anthropogenic. And the resultant increase in the global temperature because of the much more absorption of the heat by these climate gases, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxides, fluorinated gases. We know that the atmosphere that we have on our planet is kind of like a blanket, like a roof, imaginary roof of our planet that has been creating a very comfortable temperature to this planet Earth. And what we have done actually, with the climate change, we have thickened this blanket. We have thickened this roof with added volumes of carbon dioxide, methane, and other climate gases. So as a result, we are trapping more thermal radiation that is coming from the sun. And as a result, this global warming, around 1.1 degree centigrade temperature rise compared to the pre-industrial time, has been creating a lot of changes in our globe, in our planet Earth, including our oceans. Some of those are sea level rise, ocean acidifications, and many more. So this is in brief what climate change is. We will talk more on the climate change impacts. Thank you, Jahin.
Thank you, sir. Uh, as the name of today's talk implies, our oceans are ruling the climate change. Actually, ruling the climate, but we are the culprits making it polluted and unhealthy for nature. Could you please explain that how the ocean pollution can affect our climate?
Well, we know that the circulation in our planet, both the atmospheric circulation and oceanic circulations, both are actually regulated by, there are two major regulators. One is the sun, another is the moon. Well, the oceanic circulations also is again influenced by the atmospheric circulation. Well, this oceanic circulation, if we divide this ocean, if we divide this ocean-rich Earth, the ocean-rich Earth, I say because ocean occupies 71% surface of the Earth, but by volume is much more. So the equator divides, and due to the proximity of to the sun, the equator receives more heat, and the more we go towards the polar region, they receive less heat. So the differences in the temperature and thermal radiation between the two pole and the equator creates a large whirlpool movement of water between equator and north pole and equator and south pole. This is how actually ocean transports the energy that is received by more in the equatorial region towards the different corners of the earth when it is moving in large whirlpool. Well, what happens with the climate change is that due to changes in the atmospheric circulation, so as the thermal energy received by the sea, the atmospheric circulation mainly is changed. The pattern of the atmospheric circulation and global climate is changed because of these changes in 1 degree. And this is not always the increase in the temperature. As a result, we can find that there are high temperature than average temperature in certain region. There are much lower temperature than expected in certain region. As a result, what we find is that in some regions in the temperate climate, we find a news like there has been the most thickened snowfall in the last 1 century. There has been the highest temperature in last 100 years. There has been the highest rainfall, average rainfall in a particular region in the last 100 years. So these extremities really are altering the oceanic circulation, and that is influenced by the atmospheric alteration in the atmospheric circulation. Global hydrological regimes as a result has been changed. So there has been a disruption in the smooth functioning of atmospheric circulation and oceanic circulation. And these are bringing a lot of changes. As a result, we can see that the sea calamities, the typhoons, the cyclones, are more frequent than the pre-industrial time, and these are um, as a result of the hydrological changes. We can see there are more rainfall coming, more dilution of the coastal and estuarine water, or sometimes more upstream movement of the tidal water pushed by the currents, which are resulting in salinity intrusion in the coastal rivers, so and impacting the freshwater ecosystems close to the coast. So a lot of these changes in the global climate, including changes in the aquatic ecosystems and coastal ecosystems, are happening due to these changing climates. Jahin.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for your informative explanation. Next, what we want to hear from you that what are the impacts of climate change on coastal biodiversity, especially in Bangladesh and its neighboring countries?
Well, if we see at the coast of Bangladesh and many time countries, in Bangladesh and many tropical countries, we have mangroves. In fact, Bangladesh and India together share the largest halophytic mangrove forest of the world, the Sundarbans. And these Sundarbans mangroves are in continuous destruction by humans, but the added destructions are now causing from the climate change. Well, Sundarbans has the mangroves like Sundarbans has two different kinds of influences. One influence is the freshwater runoff it receives from the upstream, which has been altered because of the climate change, because the snow melts in the Himalayas and the rainfall pattern has changed. So the hydrological changes in the Pashur River and the Sundarbans that is located in the estuarine region is bringing change to the hydrology, which is creating shock and stress to the mangrove plants. Another change is coming with the sea level rise, which is posing threat with salinity. Sea level rise is pushing the salinity front towards more landward. And again, sea level rise in the coming years will be pushing more migration, will be pushing the Sundarbans to migrate more towards the land. And you know that the mangroves will not be able to cope with this faster migration of the salinity front and sea level rise. And at the end of this century, you know that we might expect as high as 1 meters rise in global sea level average in different regions of the world, which is already 0.2 meters by this 2019, more than 0.2 meters. So this will bring a lot of changes and a lot of loss in the biodiversity of our mangroves. But also these other critical ecosystems like seagrasses, which are very productive and which are shelters for a lot of aquatic life forms in the coast. And the seaweeds, well, seagrasses are much more important than seaweeds, considering the ecosystem and shelter and productivity. And biodiversity hotspots and very critical biodiversity rich ecosystems like coral reefs. Well, we have a small coral island in Bangladesh, but in the tropics, there are rich biodiverse coral reefs which are supporting a lot of fishery productivity, which most of the warm water corals we know will be lost if we have 2 degrees centigrade rise in our global temperature, which is going to happen obviously. So these critical habitats are going to be stressed, and this critical habitat supported the aquatic life forms will be stressed, and a lot of aquatic life forms will be lost. And again, we know that this is very simple physics. The warmer the temperature of water is, the less it has the holding capacity of gases. So anoxic and hypoxic conditions in the ocean waters are more common now, which is making habitats non-livable for the organisms, aquatic organisms, because oxygen is life. If it is anoxic or hypoxic, there will be no organism or less organisms. So these are definitely shrinking the habitats for the organisms to live. So these are some of the examples I can remember just now after your question. In total, the coastal and marine habitats are in huge stress together with the stress to the important aquatic life forms and biodiversity. Jahin.
Well, uh, that's a great matter of worry actually. That was about the biodiversity. But what about the livelihood of the coastal people? We know you are the associate director of IIFC and uh, working for food security. What's your perception and predictions about climate change and its possible impacts on the livelihood of coastal people?
Well, we know that coastal and marine biodiversity are the supporters of the livelihood. The ecosystem service that we get from the sea, from the coast, from the estuary is this support to the livelihood of the coastal people. And we know that around 40% of the population of the earth, they are living in the coast. And a huge proportion of this coastal population are dependent upon the coastal-based livelihoods. And one such livelihood is fishing, and a lot of different other linked industries with fishing. So imagine if we don't have, imagine a country like Maldives, where fishing is a large part of of large population of Maldives, and if there is no corals, there is no fishery productivity in a country like Maldives, and the livelihood is gone. And so as Maldives and many other countries similar to Bangladesh and many South Asian and many countries, coastal tourism is a part of the livelihood. And coastal tourism is supported with the coastal lives and coastal beauties, the coral reefs, coral islands, the dolphins in the coast, close to the coast, the cruise to see the dolphins, the Sundarbans mangrove forest that we have that supports a lot of coastal tourism. If those critical critical ecosystems are lost, a lot of the coastal livelihoods means are lost. So as the environment friendly and sustainable coastal development will also be hampered. So a lot of the livelihood options will be gone. Together with the coast will be more risky for the people to live because of the natural calamities, the intensity of natural calamities. The coast will be more risky for the people. And also there will be public health concerns. People will not like to live in the coast. As Samantha says, many people will tend to migrate because the potable water, the drinking water, the groundwater table will be contaminated. The freshwater sources will be contaminated. Even very close to the coastal ecosystem, marine ecosystem in the coast, there are freshwater ecosystems which are utilized for freshwater aquaculture, which are utilized for crop production, which are already contaminated with salt water in countries like Bangladesh, in the southwest region of Khulna of Bangladesh. We already see the impacts of salinity intrusion in our freshwater ecosystem and in our agricultural lands. So livelihood options, not only from the sea-based livelihood options, but also the other livelihood means will be lost, and so as our drinking water sources and unhealthy coastal living and livelihood options, shrinked livelihood options in the coast. in many countries like Bangladesh will push people to migrate, rushing to the towns for their livelihood means. This is going to happen. This kind of migrations has happened in Bangladesh from Khulna to Dhaka, from Barisal to Dhaka. This kind of migrations we already see because of the livelihood shrinkage in the coastal regions. Jahin.
Well, we are very much worried about this situation actually. We have a question from Nazia Tasnim. I want to give her a platform. Please, Nazia Tasnim, unmute yourself and ask your question to our chief guest or our special guest.
Thank you for giving me the platform. I have a question for Samantha and Mr. Harun-Rashid, sir. I heard that in this current situation, global carbon dioxide emission reduced drastically. So what will be the effect of this event on climate change? Can you tell me in details, please?
Well, I think there is an internet issue. We can't hear from you very good in
Jahir, I can read the
well,
question that is
thank you, sir. If
typed
you can
by
answer.
Samantha. So, well, it's good to see that global air pollution, including the carbon dioxide emission, has reduced during this COVID situation because the business, the industries, the vehicles, all of these operations are limited due to lockdowns. But this is very temporary, unfortunately. As soon as we go back to our normal life after COVID situation is improved, the carbon dioxide emission will go back to the usual situation that was 6-7 months ago, unfortunately. But what I wish is that the human civilization, humankind learns from this the few months of experience or 1 year of experience during COVID, how comfortable the air was to breathe, how good the carbon dioxide and other gases and other pollutants was, how healthy, at least temporarily, the ecosystem was compared to the 6-7 months ago. And we learn something and we change our lifestyles. And the countries who are responsible for emitting carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases will learn something from this. That is what I wish. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have another very interesting question from Mafuha Marcelin. I don't know he or she, but he is asking that what happens if the next solar cyclone becomes less active? Will we go into a new ice age? Sir, please, you can answer this.
Well, this is nothing to do with the global climate change that we're discussing now. This is the climate change we are discussing is anthropogenic. We know that the global climate change is also impacted by global geological events, and solar cycles is one of them. And that is not going to change very soon. So we don't have to worry about it. Even if we worry about the solar cycles or geological events, we have nothing to do with those kind of events. So let us concentrate on anthropogenic events of global climate change, I say. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. Okay, we are pretty close to the end. Dr. Rashid, we are hoping for some advice from you for our audience so that they can take part in saving the climate, the ocean, and the nature.
Well, I'm an aquatic scientist, well, with some interest on climate change. And as a result, most of my thinking is biased towards preserving the aquatic ecosystems, both marine and freshwater. So what I say is that we need the massive actions, macro level actions, country level policy implications for conservation and restoration of our coastal and marine ecosystems. Because the coastal and marine ecosystems, particularly the vegetations, they are like the mangroves, seagrass, these are the agencies which are trapping carbons, which are sequestering carbons to help climate better. So this is one thing. From this talk also, I request all of you to transmit this message. So and also I directly request the policymakers of Bangladesh and all over the world to conserve the ecosystems which are coastal and marine, which have aquatic vegetations, but also all the planted ecosystems, the rainforest, the kelp forest, all what we have, they are all sequestering carbons. Let us conserve them. Next, if I go to marine again, I request to implement more and more marine protected areas, what the term we popularly call MPAs. There is already the concerns and agreements among the countries, among the nations, with the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN conferences, is that the maritime countries will be preserving more and more, and up to 30% of their marine ecosystems as protected ecosystems, marine protected areas. So the more we protect our marine habitats, the more we actually preserve these critical ecosystems. And also, we need coastal development for the economic development of our countries, but we will be very careful while implementing the coastal development activities, because those are massive activities: development of installation of a port, installation of refineries, coastal cities, even the coastal aquacultures. All of those should be done in a way that is respectful to the critical ecosystems, that is less and minimum harmful to the coastal ecosystems. We should take due measures so as to minimum harm our coastal ecosystems when we do coastal development. And also, countries need to develop more and more policies so that the industrial developments in every sector we have, it has consequences to the ocean, because the industrial pollution, whether it is an industrial discharge, whether it is a plastic waste, whatever, it ultimately it reaches the ocean. So the industrial development should have a massive policy integration with them to have sustainable developments with these industries to less pollute the water and the oceans. And for plastics, I would remind that to use less and less plastics, particularly the one-time use plastics like polythene are very, very harmful. So to reduce the use of one-time use plastics that we throw after using only once, they are very harmful. And reuse the plastics and less use the plastics, finding alternative to the plastics in our lifestyle is very important. And very important is supporting scientific research on climate change, ocean global climate change, and all the different aspects of climate change, to find new solutions and new solutions and adaptations measures, and also to find what are the different harms that are being exerted by the climate change. And since climate change is a global event, we need global efforts actually to reduce the fossil fuel burn, and we need to go towards more renewable energy, because carbon dioxide the major climate gas, greenhouse gas, is mainly coming from the fossil fuel burning. So the more we go towards the renewable energy and less carbon dioxide we emit, the more we actually help the planet with climate change. And also the Paris Agreement in 2015, most of the countries of the world, they have agreed with RED plus. RED plus is, that is reducing emission from deforestation and forest degradation, which is called RED plus. And signatories, most of the countries of the world are signatories of this planet global Paris Agreement. And since we have signed, we should reduce emission from deforestation and forest degradation, and we should be respectful to the forest. We should not degrade the forest, and rather we should reforest. And these are the things actually I'd like to give you. And also every person has with their lifestyle, we can help the global climate if we switch off the fan and light when I leave my room or my office. I help the global climate because I conserve the energy. If I don't keep my tap on while brushing my teeth, and if I don't allow the tap water to be running without any use, and then also it's a tiny measure. I keep my tap off and I help the world with global climate protect global climate change, because I use less energy to withdraw the water from the ground. If I use less cosmetics, and almost all the cosmetics are enriched with microplastics, these microplastics ultimately go to the sea, and they can exert impacts to the global climate with emission of ethylene and methane, the most potent gases of climate change. Then I help the climate. So we use the less personal care products, we use more organic personal care products, we help the climate. So there are thousands of different ways that we can help with the climate, with our daily lifestyle change also. So if we eat less meat, then we have particularly the red meat from the cattle, then we help the global climate, because that the commercial cattle production is a source of the enteric fermentation driving methane emission. So there are a variety of many ways that we can do, a lot of ways that we can do with our lifestyle changes. But also, even if I'm a student now, once I will become influencing a policy, even a student's voice could be heard to the policymakers if we organize ourselves and if it's an organized message by a lot of people, and sending our message to the policymakers that actually these are the harmful things for the global climate, and we should have policy implications and programs with all the development programs. Side by side, we will have to have programs to help the climate in every development program done by the country and region. So if we have in our mind that we want to help the climate, yes, we have things to do and we can do. This is all from my side. Well, I may not be practicing all of them, but I also telling myself is that I want to practice good things with climate more and more. And if we try together, we can help combine effort for betterment of the climate, together with our individual lifestyle changes for helping climate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thank you, sir. At last, I want to say something. I want to say something from Octophin. We Octophins deeply believe that no one can change this world alone, but together we can make it a better place, a better planet. And at the last of this session, I want to say something. I want to give you a message that we don't want you to learn something from this session. We want you to realize what our guest said. We want you to realize the oceans. We want you to realize the nature, realize your position in nature. Well, our heartiest thanks to Dr. Harunur Rashid and Samantha Sophia for making us realize how important our climate is and how we should take care our planet. Let's be aware from today and fight against the worsening climate from now. The saying of Ernest Hemingway completely suits here. The earth is a fine place and worth fighting for. See you all real soon in another event of Octophin. Till then, stay safe and stay tuned. Goodbye everyone. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye. Good night.